There is a grace that follows those who walk in discernment. A peace that surrounds those who understand the weight of their presence. And a power that flows through those who know the value of their access. Some of you are too available, too accessible, too eager to please, and too desperate to be liked, so much so that people have begun to overlook you. Not because you're not powerful, not because you're not gifted, but because you've made yourself too common, too easy. You've handed out your presence like a free sample, expecting people to treasure it like a rare jewel. God did not create you to be a doormat for other people's convenience. He did not anoint you to be overlooked. There is a difference between kindness and availability, between being loving and being naive. You are called to love, yes. You are called to serve, absolutely. But you are not called to throw your pearls before swine. And today, God is shifting your mindset. Because the truth is, people don't respect what is too easily available. What is common, what is overly familiar. And the moment you stop protecting your world, the world begins to mishandle it. Stop offering your presence to people who haven't earned the right to access you. One of the most subtle ways the enemy distracts a powerful woman or man of God is by convincing them that they must constantly be available to everyone. It's a lie that sounds like love, a deception that hides behind friendliness. And before you realize it, you're showing up for people who would never show up for you. You're pouring into vessels that only know how to take. You're sowing into ground that hasn't been tilled, and you're calling it obedience. But God calls it misplaced stewardship. Every time you show up where you were not sent, you dilute your oil. You weaken your impact. You cheapen your anointing, because presence is a gift, not a requirement. Your energy, your wisdom, your love, these are not things to be offered casually. They are to be given with intention, and only to those who have the capacity and the willingness to receive with honor. But when you make yourself available to everyone, you begin to attract dishonor. People become so used to your giving that they begin to feel entitled to it. They no longer see it as a blessing, they see it as their right. And when something is perceived as a right, it is no longer cherished. You must understand that even Jesus did not make himself available to everyone all the time. He withdrew often. He walked away from crowds. He didn't feel obligated to respond to every need. Not because he didn't care, but because he understood the importance of protecting the flow of his spirit. And some of you need to learn how to withdraw, not out of bitterness, not out of pride, but out of wisdom. Because your presence is not ordinary, it carries the fragrance of God's favor. It shifts atmospheres. It brings peace where there was chaos. And when that kind of presence becomes common, the people around you lose their reverence for it. There are people who only come around when they need your encouragement, when they need your ear, when they need your time, but they never ask how you're doing. They never pour back into you, and yet you keep showing up for them, thinking that it's the Christian thing to do. But what if I told you that spiritual maturity is not just about giving, it's also about knowing when to stop. It's about knowing when your giving is no longer service, but self-abandonment. When your kindness becomes a crutch that enables someone else's dysfunction. When your yes becomes a slow erosion of your self-worth. God is calling you higher. He's calling you to steward your access with discernment. Because there are rooms that require silence. There are seasons that require distance. And there are people who cannot receive what you carry because they do not honor it. Your presence is prophetic. Stop casting it into places that treat it as casual. You'll need to announce your worth. Just stop offering it so freely. Those who are aligned with your calling will recognize it without needing you to convince them. Those who are assigned to your life will pursue you with intention. They will honor your time, your heart, your spirit, not because you demanded it, but because your boundaries made it clear that you expect nothing less. Over familiarity breeds contempt. Learn to guard your space. One of the most overlooked truths in relationships, whether friendships, romantic connections, or even ministry, is that what people become too familiar with, they often begin to devalue. It's not intentional most of the time. It's a byproduct of unchecked access. When someone can reach you at any time, demand your attention whenever they please, and consistently receive your presence without cost, they begin to lose sight of your uniqueness. They begin to handle you like common currency instead of the divine vessel God made you to be. You were never created to be common. There is something precious about your wisdom. But when you hand out your energy without discernment, when you give people constant, unrestricted access to your time, your mind, and your heart, they begin to think what you carry is ordinary. It's not that they're evil. It's not even that they're ungrateful. It's that we teach people how to treat us. And when you show up every time without boundaries, when you never say no, when you're always available, you begin to teach people that your presence doesn't require honor. And the danger with overfamiliarity is that it starts subtle. It looks like someone who used to thank you no longer expressing gratitude. It shows up as people who used to admire your wisdom now questioning your authority. It manifests in people speaking to you with tones that once would have been drenched in respect, but now are laced with expectation, entitlement, or even dismissal. What changed? Your worth? No, their perception. And that shift happened because the frequency of your access removed the mystery of your grace. Even Jesus faced this. When he returned to his hometown, the people didn't honor him as the Messiah. They couldn't even receive miracles from him, not because he lacked power, but because their familiarity blinded them to his divinity. Isn't this the carpenter's son, they said, as if his background could cancel out his anointing, as if proximity could discredit purpose. Don't miss that. Some of you are letting people who've grown used to your presence redefine your purpose. You're letting their limited view of you become your ceiling, and God is saying, no more. You must guard your space, not because you're better than anyone else, but because your purpose is too precious to be diluted by overexposure. You cannot keep letting people walk into your emotional living room, take off their shoes, and place their opinions on the table of your identity. There must be rooms in your life that are by invitation only. Access should not be assumed. Honor should be a prerequisite. And when people stop honoring you, it's not your job to force them to see your value. It's your responsibility to adjust their access. This is not about arrogance. It's about alignment. You are on assignment, and assignments require atmosphere. You cannot build what God has called you to build in an environment where people are too familiar to see the God in you, where they look at your face and miss the fire, where they focus on your past and ignore your power. So sometimes the most loving thing you can do is create distance. Sometimes the most spiritually mature move is to say, I love you, but I can't let you sit this close anymore. It's time to protect the space where your spirit breathes. Guard it not just with prayer, but with boundaries. Not everyone who has known you deserves to know where you're going next. You are not meant to be familiar. You are meant to be set apart. God is doing in and through you. Every hour matters when you're building something eternal. Every yes carries weight when you're stewarding a divine assignment. That's why Jesus didn't waste time explaining himself to everyone. He didn't sit and debate with those who didn't believe in his mission. He didn't chase those who walked away. Why? Because he understood that every second was sacred. And beloved, so should you. There are conversations that are beneath your calling, not because you're better than anyone, but because you're too focused to entertain things that don't bear fruit. There are people who don't deserve your time, not because they're unworthy, but because they're unwilling to grow, and growth is a prerequisite for access. When you're walking in purpose, your time is the soil where your future is planted. Be careful what seeds you allow to take root, because not all time spent is time invested. Some of it is time stolen. And stolen time doesn't always look like chaos. Sometimes it looks like that friend who always calls with drama but never prays with you. Sometimes it looks like the man who's been stringing you along for years, offering potential but never presence. Sometimes it's the job that pays you well but depletes your soul. And we convince ourselves that this is normal, that this is just life. But it's not. It's misalignment. And misalignment always leads to delay. God is not calling you to busyness. He's calling you to fruitfulness. And fruitfulness demands margin. You cannot pour if you are constantly being drained. You cannot hear God clearly if your schedule is packed with noise. Sometimes the most spiritual thing you can do is cancel the meeting. Say no to the event. Put your phone on do not disturb. Because silence is sacred too. Time spent in rest, reflection, and obedience is never wasted. You don't owe everyone your minutes. You don't have to justify every boundary. You don't need to explain why your calendar is no longer wide open. There is a version of you that emerges when you begin to treat your time like holy ground. A version of you that is focused, bold, deeply rooted, and divinely aligned. And that version of you can't afford to be distracted by things that only entertain but do not elevate. So today, make a decision to honor your time, to honor your calling, to protect the moments God gives you like the sacred gifts they are. Because how you spend your time is how you shape your life. And your life was never meant to be lived casually. God doesn't call you to be liked. He calls you to be set apart. One of the most dangerous traps in this generation is the obsession with being liked, accepted, and approved by everyone. We are raising our self-worth based on likes, comments, responses, and invitations. We are measuring our impact by how many people clap rather than by how aligned we are with the will of God. But hear this clearly. Divine purpose was never designed to be voted on. God's call on your life is not a group project. And when he chose you, he wasn't taking a comfortable about being set apart. It means being misunderstood. It means walking away when others are just arriving. It means saying no when everyone expects you to say yes. And it means standing firm in rooms where people whisper, judge, or question why you're different. But that's the very evidence that you are walking in purpose. Because purpose doesn't always fit in. It doesn't blend in. It disrupts. It agitates, and sometimes it offends people who have built their identity around being average. When God sets you apart, it means he has carved out a lane for you that no one else can fill. And with that lane comes divine responsibility. It means you're not called to follow trends, you're called to set them. It means you won't be able to compromise just to gain connection. There will be people who walk away because your standards feel like rejection. There will be circles you outgrow because your spirit can no longer breathe in atmospheres that lack purpose. That's not loss. That's alignment. But here's the truth that often goes unspoken. Being set apart feels lonely at first. It feels like being isolated in a crowd, like watching people move forward while you're standing still, waiting on God's timing. It feels like people questioning your decisions, doubting your motives, and mistaking your obedience for arrogance. But beloved, even Jesus was set apart. He was rejected, misunderstood, lied on, and yet He never once altered his assignment just to be accepted. If your desire to be liked is louder than your call to be holy,